If you've worked in software development or testing for any length of time, you've probably run into issues with poorly defined requirements, poor quality going into production, as well as missed deadlines. Well, at ALMComplete, we can help. With ALMComplete, you can lessen the risk of those problems over time. So how does it work? ALMComplete first allows you to define requirements. ALMComplete first allows you to define releases, and it really doesn't matter whether you're using waterfall or agile. You can divide releases into iterations or sprints, and you can also track builds or patches during this process. As you build out your releases, you can also associate artifacts with those releases. For example, you can manage tasks and tie those back to a particular sprint. You can also manage requirements, tests, defects, as well as view your percentage complete and any variance that comes along. Some of the interesting features one of the powerful features of ALMComplete is the ability to take that information and make sense of it. Notice here that we can look at release velocity. Notice here on the dashboard we can see release velocity. We can also see estimated versus actual progression, and we can also see resource allocation as well as burn downs. From a requirements perspective, you can define requirements and you can organize those along product lines. So for example, we have an orders application here and we've subdivided that down into more lower level functional areas. I've also tied these particular requirements back to a specific release or a particular sprint. As you define these requirements, you can also use the dashboard to figure out what's going on in your release. You can find out how many requirements are approved, how many are awaiting estimate. At any time, you can drill down on this information. And it'll show the details that make that up. If you need lower level information, you can drill down even further. If you're a project manager or a scrum master, you'll probably want to allocate some of your requirements into a specific release or sprint. To do that, you can go over into the project management area. We have two ways of tracking tasks. If you're using waterfall, we would recommend that you use the project plans area. It works very similar to Microsoft Project, where you can bring particular requirements onto a plan and you can decompose those down into individual tasks that others will work on. In this example, we have an add new order screen and we have several different tasks that have to be accomplished to finish that screen. You can see that we've estimated each one of these separately and we've assigned those to various people on our team. Once this information is in a project plan, your team members can then log time towards their tasks by going into the team task board. From the team task board, you can choose a specific release. Once you have that release shown, it'll show all of the tasks assigned to you. If you want to look at somebody else's tasks, you can also drill into others, or you can look at everybody's tasks. Logging time is easy. All you do is go to your task and look at Logging time is easy. On the team task board, you can see all of your items that haven't been started in the to-do area. You can also see the ones that you've started in the in progress area. And finally, you can see all the completed hours here. If you'd like to log time to a particular task, simply press Post Hours. Here you can fill in how many hours you work for the day and how many hours you feel like you still have remaining. If you want to describe your work, you can do that here. Once you return to this screen, it shows you the updated hours as well as the updated percentage complete. As a project manager, you'll probably want to inspect the dashboards. Notice the dashboards is broken into project plans as well as Agile Tasks, which we'll talk about in a minute. For each project plan that you develop, you can see a burn down chart. You can also see estimated hours versus actual hours. You can then look at velocity. You can also look at any slipping tasks that are occurring. If you're working with Agile, you may not want the hierarchical project planning. You may just want a nimble way to manage any tasks that come up. You can do that using our Agile Tasks area. In the Agile Tasks area, you can start to define your releases as well as folders. Using Agile Tasks, you can start to define tasks into groups of tasks. Within those groups of tasks, you can then tie those tasks back to both a release as well as a requirement if you wish to do so. This allows you to get really great reporting. This allows you to get great traceability reporting. This allows you to produce great traceability reporting. Similar to the project planning area, you can also go into the dashboard and look at just of the dashboard items for your Agile tasks. That will include burn downs, estimated hours, and all the other items that you saw over in project plans. If you're a QA manager or a business analyst, you'll probably want to ensure that you have good test coverage for each one of your requirements. If you drill into a specific requirement, you'll notice that you can tie tests as well as defects back to a requirement. In this example here, we have 2 tests associated with this particular requirement, and we've also discovered a defect, and we have it linked to a release. You can also see that we've linked this to another requirement as well. If you work on the QA team, you'll probably want to manage all of your test cases, and having those test cases in a reusable area will be beneficial from release to release. Notice that you can go to the test management area and go to the test library. The test library is where you're going to house those reusable tests. You can break you can divide your project. You can divide your product. You can organize your product line by functional area. For example, this orders application has several functional areas. In this application, we have some batch processing features. We have some order maintenance features, and you can see that we have specific test cases written for each one of those. If I drill into any of these, you can also see the overall If I drill into one of these, you can also see the overall information about the test, as well as the design status. This one happens to be in an approved state. All of these statuses have configurable workflow around it, and you can do auto assignment, and you can show specific fields based on the status you're in. You can also choose certain fields to be required or optional during that process. For each one of these test cases, you can also link those back to a particular requirement and a particular release. For each one of these test cases, you can also link those back to the original requirement. Notice that we have a Steps tab. This is where you can define the steps for the particular test case. If you want to edit those steps, simply press Edit, and you can then choose the steps as well as the expected results. If you want to reuse some of your steps from an existing test case, you can navigate your test library over on the right-hand side. You can find particular test cases. You can choose some of the steps of that test case and simply drag and drop those into here, and it'll pull those test steps into this particular test case. When designing your steps, you may have specific steps that are really critical. For example, maybe this date entry is really critical. If you place that as a critical step, it won't allow you to pass through this unless you pass that step. So that ensures that all of the critical steps are met before you pass the test case. You might have also noticed that we have a Run History tab. This will show you all of the runs that this test case has ever been through. It'll show you what release it was run in, what test set ran it, and what configuration it was run under. It'll also tell you whether it was passed or failed, and how long that step actually took, and how long that test actually took to run. Once you have your test defined in the library, you might have also noticed that we have a configurations area. This is really great if you wish to define your This can be used if you want to define your operating systems and browsers. So if your system This can allow you to reuse your tests for different browsers, and this will allow you to reuse your tests for operating systems. This will allow you to reuse your tests for different operating systems and browser configurations. At this time, from here you can define any number of From here you can define any number of configurations. Once you have your tests in your test library and your configurations defined, you can then bundle your tests into test sets. Notice on the left-hand side here, you can start to organize your test sets by product line as well as test suite. Notice I've created a test suite called regression test, and I have Notice I've created a test suite called regression test, and I have 5 test sets inside of that regression suite. Let's imagine that once you define for each test set, you can drill into that test set and look at all the tests that are inside of the test set. You can also look at run history that shows you every time this test set has been run, what release it was run in, what configuration it was run in, whether it passed or failed, and how long it took to run. You can also see how many tests were in that test set, how many passed, how many failed, how many were blocked, and how many are still awaiting run. To begin testing a specific test set, you first want to define what release you want to run it in. In this case, I'm running this in this release 1 sprint 1, and what configurations you might want to run it in. Here I'm going to run it in different browser, and here I'm going to run it in different operating systems and different browser settings. To begin the run, you simply come back to this screen, press the run button. This will automatically choose the release, and then it allows you to choose one of these browser configurations to run in. I'm going to run here in Windows 7 64-bit IE9. To begin my run, I simply press run. Notice this will show me all of my steps that I can go through here. So if everything passes on this particular test case, I can either pass one at a time or I can press pass all. When I get to the next test, notice that when I get to the next now I'm on the next test. I can then pass or fail each one of these steps, and I can move on. Notice that if you've tied this particular test back to a requirement or a defect or any other artifact, that information will be displayed down here, and you can at any time click on the item and it'll pull that item. This makes reviewing requirements and defects associated with this test very easy. I'll continue on with my testing, but let's say for some reason this particular test fails, and maybe it fails in this particular step here. So I'm going to mark these two as passed and this one as failed. Well, at this point I'd really like to show the developer what actually happened when I had the failure. So I'm going to bring up my application that I was testing. Now we all know the best way to Now we've all experienced times whenever the developers have told us they can't reproduce a problem. We can solve that problem really easily by recording the keystrokes that actually happened when the problem occurred. One of the things that you can use is a third-party tool called Jing. It's out at www.jingproject.com. ALMComplete integrates nicely with Jing so that you can capture movies and associate those with tests as well as defects. So let's do that. Let's turn Jing on and let's record our application. As we begin recording this will capture the video and show exactly what was going on when we caused the problem. So we'll go in and we'll open up a file, and we'll log into the order system here. We'll click reports, and notice that we're going to choose, there's no crystal reports here, so that's really the problem here. We're not getting that option there. So we want to stop this recording so that we can show that to our developers. We can then share that with Screencast by simply uploading that, and then it will upload that movie to Screencast. If we prefer, we can also have that uploaded to our own personal FTP site. Once the movie has been uploaded, we can come to the actual results here, once the movie has been uploaded, we can actually share those actual results with the developer by saying, see this movie. We can right-click and choose paste, and that will actually paste in the movie to this particular test. Once we're done, we can press submit. When we press submit, it says you failed the test. Would you like to automatically generate a defect for it? Sure, I'd like to do that so that I don't have to do that manually. I press yes. I press yes, and it pops up a defect for me automatically. Now notice that it's done some things for me. It's automatically filled in all of the steps to reproduce, and lo and behold, there's that movie that we recorded as well. If I double click the movie, it'll bring that movie front and center where I can actually play it and see exactly what happened as we went through that particular problem. Once done, you can press submit, and then it'll route that defect on over to the appropriate developer. Upon completion, it'll show you all of this test. Upon completion, it'll show you all the tests that passed and which ones failed. When we come back into ALMComplete, we can go back over to the test sets area, and we can see that run activity right here. Similar to the requirements and project management area, the testers will be able to see dashboards that can show them all of the tests that they've created as well as the run activity. So we can very easily see runs by configuration, we can see runs by requirement, we can see runs by assignee, and we can see runs by test set. If your QA team is also using automation by using Test Complete or HP's Quick Test Pro, there's an automation area in here that allows you to plug in between those tools and ALMComplete. So as you run tests in your automated test harness, it'll automatically feed those tests back into ALMComplete, and you can review the run history directly from ALMComplete. You can also use our scheduling capability to schedule tests on particular machines at particular times. Developers will use the defects area to track any issues that come up and track the resolution of those. They can also come here and search their groups of tests. They can use the grouping capability to very easily find any defects assigned to them. For example, I can come here and group this by assignee. Within that, I can subgroup it by status. For example, Barry here has several different defects. In fact, all 5 of those are active. For example, Rick here Jane Tester has several different defects. In fact, I can see that 2 of these are active, 2 have been rejected. At any time, I can drill into those defects and look at the details of the resolution. Similar to the other areas, you can also view all of this information here on dashboards. You can drill into the dashboards just as you could in the other areas. Developers can also come to the team task board and see just the defects that are assigned to them. It'll show all of the ones that are in the to-do state, in progress, or completed state. Now, for teams to be most productive, they need to collaborate. Notice the collaboration area. The collaboration area allows you to define discussion forums. For example, let's imagine that we wanted to track all of our enhancement ideas in a single place. We can create a forum for that, and we can include all of our team members into the forum. In this example, somebody said that they wanted to be able to export to XML. Somebody else chimed in and said that's a good idea, and then somebody else stubbed out an area in the product backlog to do that for it. And somebody else stubbed out a product backlog item to ensure that gets done in a future release. And somebody else stubbed out a product backlog item to ensure that this. And somebody else came in and stubbed out. And somebody else stubbed out a product backlog item to ensure that this gets included in a future release. Notice that we also have a document sharing area. This allows you to very easily share documentation. In this example, we've created an IT templates folder, and we have all of our different. In this example, we've created an IT templates folder that contains a number of different files that can be used during the software development lifecycle. We've also created one specifically for this particular release. In addition to all the great dashboards we showed you earlier, there are also a number of reports that you can run. From here, you can launch these reports very easily. Let's run a test management report that shows us our test. Let's run a test management report that shows us test coverage by requirement. From here, we can choose to run the report. This particular This particular report shows us all of our requirements on the left-hand side and all the run activity over on the right-hand side. It also gives us a bird's eye view of the entire release, how many tests have passed, how many have failed. If we want to look at more of the detail, we can continue by we can press on the next page and see all the details that make those graphs up. You can export these reports to PDF, Excel, Word, or XML. This was a quick tour of ALMComplete. We hope you enjoy the product.